Welcome. This is Majesty, Sussex Report, and I'm Antonio. Thank you for taking some of your valuable time to spend it here with us. In this episode, we're diving into the anatomy of an apology, and specifically, how Prince Harry achieved something almost unheard of, a public apology from Rupert Murdoch's news group newspapers, NGN. The noise on the other side of this argument will sell themselves or sell a family member to make you believe that Prince Harry failed. However, for decades, Murdoch media empire has been synonymous with power, influence, and resistance to accountability. Yet, Prince Harry secured what so many others have failed to achieve: a full, unequivocal public apology for years of unlawful intrusion into his private life. For the last few days, I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking about this victory and its implication, and will the mighty behavior of the British government finally do something about it? So, this is not just a legal victory. It's a cultural and symbolic triumph. The Murdochs don't apologize, but they did. And today, we're going to unpack how this apology was crafted, why it matters, and what it reveals about corporate apologies in the modern day world. Let's begin by understanding what makes an apology powerful and what makes it effective. A corporate apology, when done right, serves three purposes. Acknowledging wrongdoing. This must be clear, direct, and leave no room for interpretation. Ambiguity only breeds mistrust. Second, taking responsibility. This is where sincerity shines. The organization must own up to its actions without shifting blame. Number 3, committing to change. The most meaningful apologies outline steps to prevent future wrongdoing. Without this, apologies risk being dismissed as performatives. So let's break it down now with the NGN official apology and to Prince Harry, and see how it measures up to those three criterias. Number 1, acknowledgement of wrongdoing. NGN offers a full and unequivocal apology to the Duke of Sussex for the serious intrusion by the Sun between 1996 and 2011 into his private life, including incidents of unlawful activities carried out by private investigators working for the Sun. So what do we think? So this opening is striking for its clarity, right? NGN, after years of denial, admits to serious intrusion and unlawful activities. There is no vague language, no attempt to downplay what happened. It's there. This acknowledgement alone is monumental because it forces NGN to admit that the Sun, not just the already defunct News of the World, was deeply complicit in illegal practices. I mean, genius. Number two, taking responsibility. NGN further apologizes to the Duke for the impact on him of the extensive coverage and serious intrusion into his private life, as well as the private life of Diana, Princess of Wales, his late mother. I don't know why every time I see that line, I get, yeah, justice, right? It may take long, but justice. In particular, during his younger years. Here, NGN extends the apology beyond Harry to include the harm caused to his late mother, Princess Diana, the Princess of Wales. This is a profound admission, acknowledging the generational trauma inflicted on the royal family, and in particular, just in this case, by specifically the emotional and relational damage, the distress, damage inflicted on relationships, friendships, and family. The apology acknowledges the human cost of their actions. Oh, I mean, incredible. Incredible. Commitment to change. This is where the apology is notably lacking. While NGN expresses regret and agrees to substantial damages, there is no mention of steps being taken to ensure these illegal practices wouldn't happen again. There is no commitment to internal reforms or accountability measures to be in place. This omission raises important questions. Are they going to truly change? Or are they just simply working the legal strategy to avoid future exposure? Now, it's not in this particular apology, but NGN has said publicly that they have measures in place for this not to happen. So it's not that they don't have it, it's just not on this particular document, legal document.
And if it went to court, and with the names of very senior figures within the operation who were going to be called, that would have been very damaging, would it?
Oh, yeah, totally agree. I mean, the idea of what is, in effect, although she is not a director of the company, Rebecca Brooks, the CEO, having to give evidence, I mean, it's a public company, having to give evidence on this kind of case would be, massively damaging. And it's difficult to know how she would survive such a cross-examination. But of course, after all, she was found not guilty at the Old Bailey some years ago.
Indeed, and that's why we now have Prince Harry's lawyer effectively accusing her of perjury, picking up that in that trial she said that at the Sun she ran a clean ship, and as he said, now 10 years later, she's CEO of the company, and they admit they ran, in his words, a criminal enterprise.
Well, I would say that there is now a massive question mark on how she can survive that change of course, to be honest. When you run a public company, the various aspects to it all, and having that statement put out, I mean, the fact that she survived at all is entirely due to the fact that she has Rupert Murdoch's patronage. Had this been a normal company, Mr. Murdoch and his family speak for a huge percentage of the voting equity, then she would never have survived anyway, not in any normal public company. So I would think you're now seeing the last days.
Right, but it has to be said,
here.
I mean, whilst Prince Harry's lawyer says that, the actual statement, the wording in the statement of the NGN apology refers only to the unlawful activities of private investigators working for The Sun.
Yes, but I presume the situation there is that people were, that somebody has to sign for it.
I've been in the same room as Rebecca Brooks once. It was I was a guest on Julie Hartley-Brewer's talk radio show. And, you'll know Julie Hartley-Brewer. She often seems very severe, can be quite confrontational. The moment Rebecca Brooks sort of walked past the big window, sort of the most dramatic tone shift I've ever seen. It's like, oh, hello, hello, Rebecca. Oh. You could tell she was a woman with a lot of power in that building.
Each year, the World Child Awards, in association with GSK, recognise and celebrate the growing number of young people with complex medical conditions from across the United Kingdom, as well as those who go the extra mile to care for them. They allow us to shine a spotlight on the remarkable stories of strength, resilience, and courage that they demonstrate every single day. And this year is especially significant as we celebrate the 20th World Child Awards. It is a true privilege to honour the bravery and compassion of this incredible community. And to make this happen, we need your help to nominate the exceptional people who inspire you every single day. Your support can make all the difference. So, please join us in recognising the amazing individuals who will be honoured at the 2025 World Child Awards.
Welcome back. So, why is this apology such a big deal? The answer lies in NGN's history and the Murdoch's notorious refusal to admit fault. For decades, Rupert Murdoch's empire has yielded immense influence, shaping political narratives and public opinion while avoiding accountability for its practices. Apologies, particularly public ones, have been rare to non existent. Even during the fallout from the News of the World phone hacking scandal in 2011, NGN shuttered the papers rather than confront its actions directly. Prince Harry has changed that by refusing to settle quietly and pushing NGN to the steps of the courthouse. He forced them into a corner. Their apology is not just a win for the prince, it's a win for every victim who was pressured to settle without acknowledgement of the truth.
Denouncing it.
Many, many wholly innocent men, women, and children who at the darkest hour found their private innermost feelings and their private tears bought and sold by News International for commercial gain.
Rebecca Brooks, James Murdoch and Andy Coulson are saying, I have clean hands. It was the reporters. I didn't know what they were doing. I'm innocent. It was them. Send them to jail, not me. Why don't you stand up and tell the truth and say, sometimes, if you want to catch a politician with his trousers around his ankles, you've got to hack his phone. We did it. It's justified.
Mr. Murdoch, do you accept that ultimately you are responsible for this whole fiasco?
No.
You're not responsible. Who is responsible?
The people that I trusted to run it, and then maybe the people they trusted.
Are you satisfied that the cash payments that were made by
Cost of winning. While this is undeniably a victory, it doesn't come without sacrifices. Prince Harry's pursuit of justice was a long and grueling battle. Financial and emotional toll fighting NGN involved years of litigation, aggressive media coverage, and personal attacks. The apology acknowledges the harm caused, but it doesn't erase the toll this battle has taken on the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, and his family.
Oh, and welcome back. A lot of you all have said, Rashonda, you're not Freddy Cougar, but you stay giving these racist nightmares. And to that I say, thank you. Today we're here to discuss something that has a lot of you all confused, but I'm here to help. It's really very simple. Let's check the board. This is a chicken, okay? This is an eagle. You will never catch an eagle hanging with a chicken, even though they are both birds, okay? A chicken's worldview is very limited, okay? Predominantly on the ground, only using their wings when a predator is hunting them to flee. It is an outside motivation that moves them. Meanwhile, eagles are soaring with a different worldview. A chicken's lung capacity is not the same as an eagle. They will never be able to come up. So what do? They gather with other chickens that just happens to be racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, ableist, okay? They will never consort with an eagle, okay? An eagle is a predator. They are prey, and they know it, okay? They don't have the smarts to do anything else other than what they do on the ground. Stop arguing with chickens. We are eagles. Get it together. Thanks.
This is our breathe-in intermission. So we'll do for counts of 5, and we'll be starting with a deep breath in. Be ready at the change of the image. Ready. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold. Exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoy that quick sort of breathing exercise. I think sometimes it is needed, right? And do practice deep breathing any time of the day, especially if you feel anxiety or anything like that. It really helps in bringing you back to the center. Okay, breathing is really, really important. So one of the things that I've been quite interested in, that it's sort of in a way lured me in even more into this case, is I'm quite puzzled as to why the British people are not more upset, angry, especially after I've watched a lot of what happened in 2011 with the phone hacking and all of that, and watching members of parliament speak so assertively, aggressively, and to think that it almost seemed that the Murdoch empire, especially in the UK, was obviously coming to a halt, and that there was the will of almost all sides of the different parties to really make a dent, make sure that this stuff doesn't happen again. Till we fast forward today, and they all are running like cowards, like little mice. And to think that even after that, politicians were still cozying up with the Murdochs in order to get their approval. I mean, even the last election, waiting for the Sun to endorse. I mean, come on. And did anyone truly believe that Rebecca Brooks and all them were not like their hands are completely? It just fascinated me, and it continues to fascinate me. So I wanted to bring you guys, well, you folks, this interview, And it's an interview done by Michael Walker from Novaro Media. And I've got my issues with Michael, but that's okay. And he interviewed Stephen Barnett, who's a professor of communication at the University of Westminster, an author and board member of Hack Off. And I think somewhere in between the interview, sort of the middle part of the interview, Michael might have answered my question. He just might have, but I'm not quite sure yet. So don't go anywhere. I think it's really important to listen through the interview. I think it has some amazing insights from Stephen Barnett. So here we go.
Well, as David Sherborne said, the Sun have been denying for years, or News Group on behalf of the Sun have been denying for years, that they were involved in any unlawful information gathering at all. 1,300 people have settled their claims. There was absolutely no admission of any liability, strong armed, as David Sherborne put it, to settle. So this is the first time that the Murdochs have actually accepted that the Sun were involved in unlawful information gathering, and in that sense, it is historic. It's I think David Sherborne was right to call it monumental.
And is it a bit of a disappointment that this hasn't gone to trial? Because obviously, then presumably we would have found out sort of even more about what had gone on. Is it a sort of disappointment that this settlement's been reached?
Yeah, I mean, okay, mixed feelings, I suppose. I was in court yesterday and today, actually, looking forward to seeing accountability in action. And there is a sense of disappointment, in particular, that the allegations of a cover-up, the fact that 30 million emails were deleted. You mentioned Will Lewis, who's now published in the Washington Post, who was involved in those allegations. He was involved in the management process during the height of the phone hacking scandal, and there were a number of allegations involving senior executives, including him and Rebecca Brooks and others, that there was a systematic attempt to conceal what had been going on, and they were going to be tested in court. But in the end, as the judge said in his final comments today, that's not really, a court of law is not really the place to air those kinds of issues around bigger issues of accountability. A court of law is there for two parties to decide between them whether they're going to pursue the case, and in this case, they decided not to for various reasons. But so that's a long-winded way of saying, mixed feelings. I think it's a great vindication for Prince Harry, and I think Tom Watson was right. We've got to hand it to the guy. He's taken an awful lot of nasty stuff all over his head for many, many years from the British press for doing what he's doing. And I hope his critics will now understand what's been going on behind the press vilification. That there's a reason for it. They did not want it to come to this. All kudos to Harry. The fact that we should rely on a very wealthy guy and a member of the royal family to get justice and the truth, I think speaks volumes about the state of the British justice system, but that's a different question.
And you've said sort of you see where the judge was coming from. This is a sort of case between two individuals, not necessarily not two individuals, an individual and a sort of corporate entity, but not necessarily the place to get to the truth. What would that place be? Would that have been sort of Leveson 2, that sort of public inquiry we were supposed to have? Is that what you'd like to see?
That. I mean, and I think that's essentially. I'm inferring now, but I think that's sort of what the judge was getting at, that, there were issues here that needed to be determined. the fact that we were relying on a court of law to do that is not really appropriate. A lot of public money, let alone private money involved. There were big questions here about who authorized illegality, at what level, how far up did it go, how extensive was it, how many years had it been going on, to what extent were the police involved and, I should say, complicit? Why wasn't it pursued more vigorously by the police at the time? Big questions there. All of those questions were to be answered by the second stage of the Leveson inquiry. And in fact, during the first stage, which I was involved in, and I gave evidence twice, Lord Justice Leveson was very clear. There were certain things that we could not go into, could not discuss, because that was reserved for part two. And he didn't want to, quite rightly, prejudice any forthcoming trials. And then, of course, the press embarked on a systematic battle to undermine the Leveson report and, frankly, to intimidate successive governments and prime ministers into abandoning what would have been, for the UK press, a very embarrassing and difficult public inquiry. And Hancock, in the end, conceded 2018, I think it was, back down and said, we're not going to go ahead with it. And unfortunately, I'm afraid Keir Starmer's government has lacked the same kind of backbone and has also said they're not going to go ahead with it.
I suppose I want to sort of take this into a broader conversation about why people really should care. Because I suppose I sometimes have a tendency to look at this and I think there's Prince Harry on one side and there's News International on the other. I find News International a bit more offensive than Prince Harry, but I mean, neither of them are my team, as it were. And it can seem a bit like a sort of intra-elite squabble. You've got celebrities and royals who want a bit more privacy. You've got News International who want to sort of invade their privacy. I can understand where both sides are coming from, but is it my battle, as it?
And it's right here, at this moment, when Michael asked that question. And it's not that it's a bad question. I think it's a rather valid and good question to ask. But when he added that personal note, why should he care? When he doesn't imply, he basically compares the two groups, NGN, Murdoch Media, and Prince Harry, to almost be equivalent of the same. That was mind-blowing to me. Also, the fact that he's a journalist, I think he has a degree also in economics and all of that, that he couldn't see the link as to why someone like him should care and why all of Britain should care was absolutely mind-blowing to me. Because if he doesn't get it, what is the expectation for those who are not media savvy or understand how this stuff works? What is it? I mean, you know what? Let's just let the professor answer the question, because I think he did an excellent job.
Well, I mean, how would you respond to that?
That's a really good question, Michael. And I mean, I think the question is important on two levels. First of all, why does it matter to the general public? And the answer to that, I think, is very clear. I mean, in my involvement with the Hacked Off campaign, I have seen ordinary people, ordinary individuals, who simply become the victims of extraordinary events. They may have been involved in the 7/7 bombing. They may be related to people involved in the Manchester Arena bombing. If you think back to the McCanns, having they were just an ordinary couple who had their child kidnapped. So all of these people suddenly find themselves on the receiving end of the most intrusive tabloid press coverage, including the use of unlawful information gathering, whether it's not just phone hacking, blagging their records, their bank records, their phone records, their local authority records. So we hear about the celebs, we hear about their royal family and the Hugh Grants and the Sienna Millers. That's really not what this is about. They're the people who stood up to be counted because they've got the deep pockets. But you or I or anyone could actually be on the receiving end of some of this if we happen to be involved in some kind of major incident. And we're unlucky enough to become the focus of scrutiny and publicity by a click-hungry press. And a press in this country, I'm afraid, which lacks morality, which lacks ethics. So that's my first point. My first answer to your question is it's actually about the general public. It's not about celebs. But my second point, which is kind of implicit in the first, is about journalistic ethics, journalistic integrity. When the first phone hacking scandal first broke, you're a journalist, you'll understand this. I did quite a lot of international interviews. I did a lot of stuff on camera with European correspondents, the London correspondents of Die Welt and Le Monde and Washington Post. And almost without exception, the first question they asked before the cameras were rolling was, what is it about journalism in this country? And how do you, can you explain why journalists have been doing this in the name of journalism? And the answer is because there has been, I'm afraid, a toxic culture at the heart of a few, not all, but a few major media organizations, newspaper organizations, which says anything goes. The most important thing is to get a scoop, get your name on the byline, get a front page splash, and if there's collateral damage with ordinary members of the public, tough. That's the way it goes. And that comes from the top. It comes from Murdoch, not just from Murdoch. It's associated newspapers, the Mail, the Express, even, I'm afraid, to some extent these days, the Telegraph. But it's at the tabloid level, the red top level, that it's been at its worst. And the answer, the bigger question is, what do you do about that? You have decent independent press regulation where the editor's code, which is supposed to be the gospel in terms of how journalists behave, actually means something. It's not just a kind of something that is written on a scrap of paper that journalists feel they can ignore, like broadcast journalism and even some online journalism. These things matter. So you need some kind of proper independent regulation, exactly what Leveson proposed, that will hold these journalists to account and will have actually have a genuine framework of what journalism should be about, rather than the kind of corrupted, toxic version that is practiced or has been practiced in some of our tabloid newspapers.
I suppose when this story sort of first broke in the early 2010s, one of the reasons it was quite, exciting in a way to watch is because Rupert Murdoch had seemed somewhat untouchable in British politics for a long time, sort of wielded extraordinary power.
Now, I don't have an issue with this question per se, but I've seen a lot of journalists ask this question about whether or not Murdoch and his media empire and the newspapers and all the other stuff, whether it's relevant or not because of social media. It maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just the way I think. Maybe I'm the stupid one. I'm not sure. Because how could you not think? How could you not think that the power that this family has is not important? You still have candidates, you still have party leaders that become prime ministers that are afraid to touch. I'm like, when you have a country that diligently reads this stuff and believes everything that is written there, that has an extreme bias. And you, I mean, has he watched Talk TV lately? Has he? I don't understand what is like. The frustration is because of all the stuff that is happening right now. I guess I'm not a journalist. I am, in some sense, a storyteller, and I see so many stories that need to be told. But these people who are journalists, who are experts in the profession, have their heads up a certain orifice, or they're so stuck in their ideology that they cannot see how what Prince Harry is doing is in benefit of everyone, and everyone should actually care. I mean, I don't understand if you're so pro for the people and you don't understand what the Murdochs have done and that they still have this kind of influence. uh, Again, I ask the question then, you, a journalist, educated, well informed, if you don't, then how we expect, like, damn, I'm losing hope by the second here.
Power over consecutive governments because he was seen as someone who could swing elections. And you know, the fact that this scandal was coming out made it feel like, oh, finally they're being knocked off their perch. Finally, we can have this discussion about the Murdoch press or the tabloids or just the corporate press more generally in this country. We're in a very different situation now. You know, in 2025, Rupert Murdoch, does he tower over British politics? It's more difficult to say with the rise of social media and the like. So do you still see, they're not on Fleet Street anymore, but sort of you normally call it Fleet Street. Do you see sort of the British newspapers as having political power in the way they used to? And I suppose a related question is, does holding them to account in something like a Leveson to, even, you know, I think we should do it, but does it have as much urgency as it once did?
Well, the answer to the second question is yes. I mean, you know, why are we still asking about inquiries into infected blood, into the post office scandal? These are people. These are either conspiracies or corruption or incompetence from which there were real victims, and that's the same here. There were, you know, hundreds, thousands of victims of press intrusion, press abuse, unlawful press activity. So we're not talking about something that kind of you shrug and say, well, you know, it's not quite the same as, you know, having your living taken away by a corporation like the post office. Well, actually, for some people, I'm afraid it is. There are people who have lost their livelihoods because they have been abused by the press. So let's be consistent about this. If we want justice and accountability for people involved in whether it's infected blood or the post office, and there are others, why not the press? And I think there is a question for those people who've been on the receiving end. It's a matter of I'd quite like to see the people who did this brought to account. But I think there is a broader point which you started with it, and it's a good point, which is, come on, it's the age of social media. Everyone's talking about TikTok and Instagram. Does any of this matter? My answer to that question is, why do you think that Starmer and Johnson before him and May before that, and sorry, I forgot Liz Truss, but, you know, the letters, but every consecutive prime minister has shied away from doing anything since Leveson, including Cameron? And the answer is they're still afraid of the press. Why are they afraid of the press? Two reasons. First, they think they still have the ability to sway people's opinion. Sun editorial. Think about the fuss during the election about which way the Sun was going to swing. Was it going to support Labour? When was it going to support Labour? How seriously was it going to support Labour? Those were actually news headlines. So politicians, political leaders still think the press sways public opinion. We'll leave to one side whether they're right or wrong. I think to some extent they might still be right. But the bigger question is setting the media agenda. Who sets the media agenda? Why is Starmer still concerned to write for The Sun, to brief The Telegraph, to make sure that his story is properly covered in The Times, etc.? The reason is the press in this country still sets the agenda. Maybe not as much as it did 20, 30 years ago, certainly not 40 or 50 years ago, but it's still very influential. Politicians are aware of that. They maybe exaggerate it in their own minds, but they're certainly sufficiently aware of it to continue to be afraid of it. And I think that fear itself actually speaks volumes about why something needs to be done.
Okay, so there you have it. Professor Stephen Barnett. I just thought listening to him and the way he answered the questions was just perfect. He answered them in knowledge. He answered them with the importance, and he also provided the different angles. I mean, I think that everyone should listen to this interview, and because if you didn't care before, he does outline as to why it matters, right? I mean, to have a journalist like Michael, right, who was like, oh, I don't, they're the same, the Murdochs and the Prince, same thing, they're both evil, or whatever. It's just disconcerting, and for him not to think that the Murdoch media empire still has a lot of sway and say in what happens in the daily lives of British people, and influence, and enormous amount of influence politically. If he doesn't see that and know that, that explains a lot to me, a lot to me. So I thought it was an excellent interview. Regardless, I'm happy that he had um, Stephen on, and it was just fantastic. I hope you enjoyed it too. The interesting thing, I watched another interview, the news agent, and they had Steve Coogan on. He's a English Irish actor, and he also he also settled. But he was saying, for example, he said there was so many of them that are waiting to see what the government will do. And he said they would like for there to be like an investigation, like go to the Livingston 2 and make sure that the details and all of that, like really to have everything come out, right? Because it is ludicrous to think that these executives did not know. It is ludicrous to think that Pierce Morgan did not know. It's ludicrous to think that Rebecca Brooks did not know, right? And he said ultimately, if the government doesn't do anything, that Prince Harry has set it up a certain way, um, that they actually might take up the mantle from this point on and do basically instead of the government doing it, it'll be have to be private people bringing these suits on. You know what I kept thinking to the other day? I kept thinking because they are quite a lot of famous people, right? And even with the settlement that some of them have gotten, I wonder right? I wonder if they had found, if they could have found a way, especially for the very famous ones, to say, you know what, we're going to all pitch in £1 million. I mean, if they've got £1 million, right? To just harness all of that and say, listen, Prince Harry, refuse any settlement that they come to you. We have £20 million or whatever, right? And go for it. So Prince Harry wouldn't be out of pocket, whether he wins or not, having to pay the legal fees for the Murdochs. Anyways, this case is fascinating to me. I cannot believe that after 2011 and everything that came out in 2011, I'm telling you, when you've got deep pockets, a lot of things can disappear, and you have more than 8 lives, I guess. Okay, so I wanted to just quickly, I'm going to. I saw a couple of things and I thought, should I comment on it? Should I not? I mean, we're close to an hour already, but I thought I'll just give my 2 cents and then let it be.
Let me ask you a question. What does declassifying files, renaming bodies of water, and ending birthright citizenship have to do with the economy, this ridiculous healthcare system, or education? Do you realize that there was another school shooting in Tennessee and he hasn't said anything about it? And then when you look at all of the school shooters and these terrorists, they've all been U.S. citizens. And he wants to talk so much about immigrants being the problem, but your U.S. citizens are the ones killing everybody. And then we still have this fire blazing in L.A. and he's over here playing with relief funds and flexing his relief funds. But are we cool? What are you guys thinking and what's going on in your brain to make you think this person would be a good person to lead our country? How long are you going to keep glazing this man? So I'm going to not be like the 66% of uneducated voters who voted for him. And I'm going to keep learning and educating my young mind and keep speaking up for myself and everybody in my generation, because I don't know who else is going to do it, because it's definitely not going to be him. So I'm going to keep preparing my mind and keep learning about politics and my education. And I'm going to prepare for 2048. That's when I run. So I hope you guys have a wonderful, great, and amazing day. And all who voted for him, do some more research and prepare for 2028. Because let's not have you make the same mistake. Always remember, positivity is always a plus. Because doing your research is positive.
I don't know about you, excuse me, but he's got my vote. He has got my vote. Whew. Oh man. Anyways, okay, people, hit me up with the first, the first image. Let's see what's going on. Ay, 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 ay. So this was in the Mirror, the tabloid, and was picked up by Celebici. And um, so Princess Kate wants to fly to America to meet up with Harry at some point this year. I am so sick and tired of the very sick minded people who call themselves journalists and royal reporters and columnists and insiders, outsiders, whatever they would like to call themselves. But their racism and hate is so much that they would prefer to think that Kate and Prince Harry would have an affair, or that they had an affair, or something to that sort. Listen, people, just because just because he was a gentleman and he was trying to at least have his brother behave like a husband, just because he was kind to her, it doesn't mean he was laying in bed with her. I'll tell you this though. I looked at her 3 kids and I said, "Thank you, Jesus. None of them look like." I know. I know. I'm sorry. I know. But I was like, "Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Jesus." Baby Jesus, hallelujah. Hallelujah, baby Jesus. Because she and I look, I don't blame her, okay? I don't blame her. I don't. But that's not who she married. So I would recommend to the tabloid press, stop it. Come on. It's so disgusting. Right there and right on the out. You're all telling him to leave his wife and his kids. And you've been insinuating forever. Stop it. Stop it. You can't have it both ways. Or 3 ways or 4 ways or I mean you could. But no. So stop it. Next slide. All right, the future king and his spouse. And that is from the Holocaust Memorial Day, I think. They look fine. Um, it's interesting. Looking at those 2 pictures, they don't look they fine. You could tell maybe if you didn't know better that they are married, but I mean, look at the distance between them. Look at like she's standing instead of standing right by. I don't know. I don't know. It's just I don't want to criticize that kind of stuff because it is what it is. But do you folks ever? I know you're gonna say no. Don't come for me, okay? Don't come for me, people. But sometimes I just feel I can't help it. I'm a humanitarian. I just when people make the wrong decisions in life, and you take that, you come to a cross, an intersection, a crossroads, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna take this one, and then you go on down one, and you start to realize it might not be the right one, and there was an opportunity at one point for you to like get on a different path, but you chose to just like, you know. I wish them the best. I wish them the best. I'm sure it's not an easy thing to be the heir. I just wish they would just stop all the nonsense and just live your life as the Duchess of Sussex said at one point. Meghan said, "Look, you don't have to drag me down in order to lift her up. Even if you don't want to lift me up, even like you can go ahead and lift her up all you want, but you don't need to drag me down. You know." All right, next. Well, 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 isn't she lovely? Dun, dun. Isn't she beautiful? She starts to hug everyone around. She, my goodness. So, Katie now is Huggy Katie. You know, I'm so impressed that Catherine is giving such a nod to her sister-in-law in Montecito. It's such a beautiful way of her saying, Megan, look what I'm doing, Megan. I am hugging people. I'm hugging the commoners, Megan. And I see it as a signal. I see it as an olive pit. No, no, no. What's it called? An olive what? An olive leaf? No. What's it called? An olive pasta? No. Pesto? Oh, branch, an olive branch. Oh, right. So an olive branch. I see that. I see she's extending an olive branch at the Holocaust Memorial in London to the Duchess of Sussex. She's saying, look at me. Look at me. I am hugging people. And that's all because of you. I think it's beautiful. Beautiful. Now let's just see what happens in Montecito. Let's see. The ball is in Montecito's court now. Yeah? Okay. Okay. Please go to the next one. Well, let's start with the good. The good is that whoever took that photograph, fantastic. The lighting, the sort of cascading hair on the side, parted on the fantastic. Brilliant. Now, I mean, oh man, who is advising? Oh, they hate her, don't they? Don't they? Or something. I'm not sure. Does she not know? Does she not? The I'm sure you folks know, right? The Chanel bag, the Chanel bag. Uh huh. And she's at a Holocaust memorial, and the Chanel bag. Okay, okay. I was worried there for a minute that some of you were like, we don't know what that is. So, for those that don't know, so how can I do this without getting like dinged or something? So, um, there is a Holocaust because of a certain type of people that belong to a certain party that begins with the letter N and ends with the letter S. It's like Narcissus, but it's not Narcissus. It's, yeah. So Coco Chanel was alleged to have collaborated with the Narcissus, right? Coco Chanel, the founder of the luxury brand house, has been accused of collaborating with Narcissus during Germany's occupation of France in World War II. She allegedly acted as a spy for the Alemanes, the Germans, using her influence and social connections to aid their efforts. So, wearing a Chanel bag to a Holocaust memorial, not a good thing. Oh, Catherine, so sorry. And this is the last one. So thank goodness. All right, so what are we looking at? We're looking at Fit for a Princess inside Kate Middleton's 134,000 pounds Cartier jewelry collection, including 18 carat chain from Wells and 3,000 carat gold earrings. Oh, isn't that wonderful? Do they know that they've got um um Oh man, Catherine, Catherine. The calls are coming from inside the house, my dear. From inside the house. They're like gaslighting you, Catherine. Catherine, I don't think the editor of the wasn't it the editor of the Sun that said that she had called the palace to make sure Catherine was okay, and she what's her name again? Victoria something? Newton, Victoria Newton. So Catherine, man, Catherine, listen. I don't think she's a friend. I don't think she's a friend because she even found your double. She found your double and had your double. Yes, double. Someone that kind of looked like you but wasn't you. Walk with Willis, Mr. Willy Wonka, in some market somewhere, and you were chipper and happy and smiling. I mean, according to La Española, the Spanish lady, you were supposed to be in a coma. That's all I'm saying. They said you were in a coma. That's what they said. But then you appeared out of nowhere because Victoria Newton Victoria said she called the palace, worried about you, and she bought the footage. And of course, like the tabloids don't get involved in any of this whatsoever. Girl, girl, look, just I know she just wants to be queen. Oh, she just wants to be queen, 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 queen. Listen, is it worth it though? If I were you, if I were you, I would say goodbye. If I were you, I think I need to end it right now. Enough. There's a lot happening. You turn on any television station or you go on social media and the pain and suffering is all over. But also there is mocking and rejoicing, and it's as if I'm living in times that I never thought I would. Almost like end of days or something. I wasn't quite sure whether I would have a parting note or anything to say. I've debated it back and forth, but then I thought I'll just plug in the mic and sit here until something comes out. The Bible tells us that whoever mocks the poor shows contempt for their maker. Whoever gloats over disaster will not go unpunished. There is a story. It's a sad one and it could be triggering, perhaps. But it's coming to me quite strongly, and I guess I am meant to tell it. I don't recall where I heard it. I don't recall how it's in my memory, but it's there. It's a story soaked in sorrow, wrapped in regret and trembling under the weight of truth. A nurse once stood at the bedside of an old woman. The woman's hands, thin as parchment, trembled as she pointed to somewhere, something unseen, but there. That's the boy. She whispered, "That's the boy. That's the boy." She whispered again and again. The nurse thought it was hallucinations or fever delusion, a mind unraveling in the fog of medicine and time. But days passed, and the woman grew a little bit stronger, better. She held the nurse's hand and wept. "Why is the boy still here?" she asked. "Why won't he leave? Tell him to leave." The nurse saw no boy, only an old woman with tears that would not stop falling. And then one day came the confession, cracked and broken, as fragile as her breath. Long ago, as a child, I pointed. Long ago, as a child, she had pointed too. Pointed at a black boy. Said words that should never have left her lips. "He touched me," she said. It was a lie. And her people, they believed her, every word. They stormed Stillboy's home, pulled him from the arms of his mother, and did what white mobs in those days did. Strange fruit. Strange fruit. And now, all these years later, at the edge of her own eternity, she saw his shadow. And it would not let her go. "Will he forgive me? Will he forgive me?" She sobbed and sobbed. But how does one forgive when the body is long buried? How does one mend a lie that sent a child to his death? The nurse looked at her and said, "Well, I guess it's up to him. You have to tell the truth." She said, "He didn't do anything." "I said that because his sisters had prettier dresses than me. His sisters were wearing prettier dresses than me." His sisters that day wore these floral dresses. They never had anything fancy. It was the only thing that was sewed together, cloth sewed together, made a dress. And she couldn't bear the thought that these two black girls wore a dress or wore two dresses that made them look pretty. This is not just a story of yesterday. It's a story of today. This is the world we walk in, the world we have shaped. The cruelty of men and women who yield power like a hammer, who turn fear into law and hatred into policy. The new administration in the United States, ripping children from their mother's arms, tearing families apart. They strip the hungry of food, the sick of care, the disabled of dignity. And when a young woman, Selena Gomez, dared to say, let them be treated with some kind of humanity, they shredded her, mocked her, drove her away. And I ask, where is our mercy? Where is the kindness we claim to believe in? Where is our love? They brought a woman before Jesus. She was caught in sin, prepared to stone her to death. They asked what should be done. But he, knowing the darkness in their own hearts, said simply, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And one by one, the stones fell from their hands. Where is the mercy? Who is so quick to hold a stone? Who is so quick to punish the hungry? Who is so quick, so eager to destroy? Pain, chaos, cruelty. A president, a leader, a real leader, sent a plane for his people, refusing to let them be trampled by American inhumanity. He said, I refuse their military planes because my people will not come home the way they were being treated. They will come home with dignity. They will come home like humans. Presidente de Colombia. Orgullo. A pastor, a woman of faith, stood before the most powerful man in the world and begged him to have mercy. And what did they do? They mocked her, laughed at her fate. But she spoke anyways. And so must we. And so must we. It's not time to mock people. It's not time to make fun of them. It's enough. Because we don't know who is next. And I might be next. You might be next. We are all next because we don't look like him. We don't look like them. Please take care of yourselves. Keep on praying. Because God is great. Thank you.